So we're talking about Captain America 2, Death Too Soon, right? The 1979 television film?
You've just out-pop cultured me.
Coming up on the drop zone, Cap.
You do anything fun Saturday night?
Well, all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead, so no, not really.
You know, if you ask Kristen out from statistics, she'd probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy. Was he wearing a parachute? No. No, he wasn't.
I joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to protect people.
Captain,
To build a better world?
sometimes means tearing the old one down. And that makes enemies.
Are you ready for the world to see you as you really are? You look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
You need to keep both eyes open.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Your work has been a gift to mankind. You've shaped the century. But I need you to do it one more time.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Next Reel Film Board. It's a special, very special episode of VSE. One of us is going to have a special moment after prom. I'm Pete Wright, and we also have the lovely Andy Nelson.
Hey!
Hi, Andy.
Howdy do!
And we have the super talented Steve Sarmento.
Hey, good evening, guys. How you doing?
Good evening, Steve. It's just the three of us right now. There is a chance that the fine and talented actor Chadd Stoops is going to be joining us very shortly, but we're just starting.
Yep.
And he'll be jumping in right in the middle. But for now, we're going to be talking about Captain America 2, Death Too Soon. We're not talking about, what is this movie called? Captain America, the Winter Soldier. It's the next Captain America movie, and we're a little bit late on it. We're a couple of weeks late, and I don't know. In the spirit of full disclosure, we were going to talk about Transcendence tonight, and we may have mentioned that in the past. I don't know if we've ever mentioned that in the past, but we're not talking about Transcendence because, according to those who keep the records, that movie sucks. I have not seen it. Have you guys seen it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Steve, you haven't seen it yet?
I wasn't gonna. I mean, it's just been torn apart in the reviews. So I've got other things to do with my time.
I think that's speaking kindly. It's not good, and so we may, we'll probably see it and may mention it at some point in the future. But we're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the second in the Captain America line of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The third of just having Captain America in movies? The third or fourth that we've seen him in of the 9 Marvel movies.
Well, it's the second of his movies. He was in the Avengers, and he's got a cameo in Thor 2.
That's right. It was Thor 2, so we've seen him 4 times, the Cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you guys think of this film? Just as I know, we have a lot to talk about, just in terms of what they're doing with this film, what this film represents, I should say. But what do you think of the film as a standalone unit?
Well, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's interesting seeing these standalone units coming after the Avengers when we see all of these people in the world together, and then we have their individual stories again. And it's like, well, like in Iron Man 3, why didn't so-and-so come and help him stop the bad guy there? Why doesn't Captain America get Iron Man to come in and help him in this situation? Those questions, I guess, can come up in your heads, and you just, I don't know, I guess in the scheme of being somebody who knows how comic books work, I think you just kind of remember, okay, Captain America had his whole line of comic books. The Avengers had their whole line of comic books. Iron Man had his. And so, they all are in the same universe, but they're not just partners all the time. And watching Captain America, I think this one I actually found easier to watch than Iron Man 3. I think it was, as a whole, it felt like it worked better as a follow-up to Avengers. Iron Man 3, I mean, I liked what the kind of the psychological issues that Iron Man, Tony Stark was going through after the Avengers. But this one I just liked. It worked really well on its own because it's dealing with very specific issues that happened in the first Captain America film.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just add to that. I mean, I think you hit it when comparing it to the latest Iron Man film. And while I really loved, what Robert Downey Jr. did, the way he played his PTSD in that film, I thought was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yay, trauma. I thought it fit the theme of the film. I thought this Captain America was less exciting, but vastly more compelling than Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I'd say it was less exciting. I mean, it had some pretty good, some pretty big scenes in it, but gosh, I'm thinking back to Iron Man 3, it's making me realize how maybe forgettable that film was, because not a whole lot is actually sticking out in my head other than like the end and the plane crash scene.
I think his house falling into the ocean was an extremely intense sequence. I thought that was very exciting. Well, and that's not what we're talking about, but I get your point, and I hijacked that thing. Steve, what did you think?
Well, I did enjoy this one. The first Captain America film, I wasn't that excited about. It did some fun things, but it felt, I don't want to say formulaic. It was just, it felt really like we need to set up the background for this character. And now that we've got that established, to me, they came up with a really interesting story to put him through, going to, Iron Man 3 and what he's dealing with. We still have Captain America, a man out of time and still trying to find his place. And early on in the film, it really set up some of the themes for the film. I saw this with my oldest daughter, and we had a conversation very, very briefly in hushed tones after one of the opening scenes where Captain America's having a conversation with Nick Fury, and the topic of secrets and trust kept coming up a lot in that conversation. And we leaned over, and she's like, "I think it's going to be a lot about secrets and trust." I said, "You know what?
Who's keeping score? Somebody write that down."
It's like, there's our exposition right there. Boom. It did some really interesting things for the character, and there, in terms of the Marvel universe, there were lots of things going on. But just in terms of a standalone story, and the plot and where things went for this character, I was really I was excited. I was thrilled. There are some flaws. I think anytime you get into one of these sort of thriller espionage type films of there's something secret hidden trying to be discovered and who's playing which side, there's always, I find, if there's some threads that if you pull on them too hard, some things start to fall apart. So you just, but this movie, it wasn't until, I think probably a good 18 hours afterward that I started thinking about some of these things going, wait, how does this come together? But as I was in the theater, to quote Pete, I paid for my full seat, but I only used the edge of it.
And you're welcome.
Pete loves it when you quote him saying that.
And so then I went back to the theater and I demanded half of my money back because I didn't use the full seat.
You're taking a bridge too far, Steve. Okay. Okay. I'm with you. I think what the stuff that's going on in this film that's most interesting is the fact that they are that they're doing their best to change to play up genre in this film in a kind of an interesting way. And I've been trying to figure out Kevin Feige. Isn't it Feige or something? Feige.
Yeah, I think it's Feige.
Okay, so Kevin Feige is he's the head of the Marvel essentially the doyen of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And from what I understand, he and his team are in charge of putting all the pieces together that unite all of these, the so far 9 movies and others planned. And they all come around, all these individual films revolve around the tent poles, the Avengers Age of Ultron. These are the films that tie the individual, they're sort of the planets, and the others sort of orbit around them. And on that point, Andy, your point I think was interesting in just kind of reading up on this. One of the things that I read here is that, in fact, they do have a plan at some point to explain where Iron Man was when, S.H.I.E.L.D. is falling, right? They have a plan to explain that probably in Age of Ultron, but these things are going to be tied up. These loose ends are going to be tied up. We just may have to wait until, 2020 to see it. Isn't that crazy ironic that I would say that? Hey, wait a minute.
Hey.
Chadd, there he is.
I love to eavesdrop. I love to come in this way.
Hey, Chadd Stoops. Well, luckily you've already been introduced, so tell us what you weren't here for it.
No.
Tell us what you thought of this movie.
You know what? It was definitely worth the time and the money spent. It's like, what is it? 2 hours, 2.5 days long, or something, something like that. But it was totally worth it. Now it is a superhero movie that is. I think you gotta. My uncle went and saw it. And he never saw the first one even, and he enjoyed it. But it's definitely one where I think you've got to see the first one to kind of understand, Bucky and all the other kind of little plot, things that they're using to make the story move along a little bit more. You don't quite understand the relationship if you're not seeing the first one. But other than that, I just thought it was good. I don't know why it was called. Or I didn't feel like there was enough of the Winter Soldier in that to make it called the Winter Soldier. I think they could have had more of the Winter Soldier in it. It felt like he was sort of like a side thing that was in it, but it really wasn't about him, or didn't involve him enough, at least in my opinion. But I felt like it was good. It was entertaining. Where are we? I feel like
no, you just. We just started. You're doing fine.
Am I doing fine, or is this stuff you guys already talked about? Yeah.
No, in fact, you brought up the Winter Soldier, and I think that in terms of a titular character, he sure didn't seem like a titular asset.
He wasn't, and I felt really bad. He was more like a little. You know what he felt like? He felt like the Gimp. He from Pulp Fiction. I was waiting for him to come out of a box and then just whip him and put him back in there. I was like, Robert Redford just like whips him around and slaps his face. I was like, this guy could kill you, Robert Redford, probably in real life. And he just slaps his little face, and then they go on with the movie. But he didn't seem like he was in it enough.
I think that was interesting. What's your take on that, guys? Because I think that's there's some explaining to be done. I think about the title of the film.
I talked to a friend of mine who's a huge Captain America fan, because that was a big complaint of mine. I'm like, why is it called this? I mean, he's obviously a character in the film, but he's not like so important that the whole plot hinges on him. And it seemed a little weak to me. And he said, well, he's going to come into play in a major way in the third film. I'm like, well, that's great, but why not call the third film The Winter Soldier? Why use that title up on this one? So I don't know. I had a problem with that. Although I will say I like where they're going with that, and that's the arc that I'm enjoying in this Captain America series. I just rewatched the first one last night, watched this one, and I'm looking forward to seeing the third one to see how this plays out, and the fact that what's his name?
Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian Stan has signed on to be in 9 Marvel films.
Right. So compared to Chris Evans' 6.
Yeah, exactly.
So we know when he's going to fall out of the helmet. He'll just fall right out of the helmet. I think that will end up being kind of the most interesting transition probably in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, according to the comics, as I understand it. And I'm certainly not as well read as your friend, but as I understand it, the helmet switches heads And at some point, this will likely be the line where we lose a superhero in film.
Really?
Oh.
That's my understanding. You heard you heard it here first, because that's apparently the line that Bucky becomes Captain America 2. He picks up the mantle and as an faith.
And so does Chris Evans become go back to Fantastic Four?
Johnny Storm. He was the best Johnny Storm.
Johnny Storm.
I think he does not, but because he'll be done with this run. I'll bet he moves on. And so we've got Sebastian Stan kind of picking up the mantle probably around 2017, 2020, and we'll get that kind of a new. That'll be phase 4. This is what I've been trying to wrap my head around. Steve, I'm sure you know more about this than I do, right? That the cinematic universe that they're creating, there was phase 1, which was the initial introduction of these characters, and they all they hit the Avengers, and that was kind of the tentpole, the end of phase 1, the beginning of phase 2.
Correct.
And phase 3 comes at the close of Age of Ultron. That's my understanding. And then what?
Well, and then the rumors, I guess, or speculation that is out there is that that sometime in phase 3 is when we will get a Hulk standalone film
with Mark Ruffalo.
Yes. So that now there's all kinds of, speculation. Which storyline is it going to be? And all, given these characters. So of course there's always all these ideas being thrown around, but I guess, recently, I guess, Marvel came out and said they've got everything planned out through 2028. I think they've stated so that there's these phases, and I know we know for certain that we've got Avengers: Age of Ultron, we've got Ant-Man coming.
Right.
Is that next summer? I believe we have Guardians of the Galaxy coming later this summer. So we've got a few things to sort of see how we're weaving all these pieces together, but that's what I know about phase 3 is that's the point at which supposedly that we'll get Hulk in a standalone film.
Right.
So, but as far as introduction of other characters, I mean, with Bucky being introduced in this film, the question of the number of films he's contracted for. I mean, is this a character that just like, Black Widow is going to be appearing in not only like the big Avengers film, but is going to have parts in, is he going to be showing up in an Iron Man film? Is he going to be showing up in a Thor film? So there's, we don't know what storylines they're going into. So I've heard speculation that they're going to follow along with the, Bucky taking on the mantle of Captain America, and that explains the length of the contract. With all of these things, there's always so much speculation. There's so much back catalog of stories that they can draw from. I just, am continually impressed that they're able to create films that not only, as far as I can tell, appease the diehard, comic book fans, but are still accessible to the general public that don't have the background, and to be able to balance those pieces together to have a film that you can come into without having seen the previous Captain America film and enjoy it for all that it's worth, and people that have that rich, deep, background in the Marvel universe, are just enjoying these films just as much.
Now, the question I have is, do you think they're going to go the route of Secret Wars? Do you guys know what Secret Wars is?
Okay, well, now you got to refresh us on that.
Okay, so the big thing with the end of Avengers, and everybody was watching the end, and they're like, oh, I know what that weird guy is. That was supposed to be what sets off...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, you go. No, really.
Oh, okay.
You, sir.
You go. Well, basically, that's supposed to set off Secret Wars, where it collects all of the supervillains and all of the superheroes from Marvel, sticks them on a planet, and they have a war. We have a war together, and that's what the end of that Avengers. That character was, I think, was it Galactica or was
the Collector?
Was it the Collector?
Right.
No,
I thought it was
not that Not that. He's at the end of Thor.
That was the tie
into
Avengers. Right. The tie into Guardians of the Galaxy.
Who's the guy at the end of the Avengers?
Yeah.
Right. Up on the meteor, the standing in space guy.
That would be Thanos, and that's again where we saw, again now we're getting out into outer space. That's where we're getting back to Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, and again, it's a character that was introduced briefly, and again, it's to what end? Where are we going to go? Do we see a connection at the end of Thor? We have the Collector, and there's always these little teases, and again, never enough to say, oh, it's clear what storyline they're going to, because it's been, we've had how many films since the Avengers, and as far as we can tell, nothing related to Thanos or any storyline involving him that we know of, clearly identified. So I just put my trust in the brain trust over there at Marvel and say they're gonna pull this all together.
The Beyonder. The
Beyonder, yes.
That's what I was thinking. So was he the Beyonder?
No, it's Thanos.
Oh, it is Thanos. Okay, because everybody thought that was the Beyonder.
And Thanos is actually going to play into Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, okay. So that's all going to link. So what about because supposedly Spider-Man is supposed to be an Avenger.
The problem is that different studios control them, and so that's why thus far and likely in the future, Spider-Man is not going to be a part of the Marvel universe.
And I guess that this was addressed recently because there was speculation of, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, there's some tie into the Marvel universe, and apparently it's not a post credits tease. I guess there's an extended trailer or something that's going to be at the end of the credits. But what I read, and I'd have to find the article, but I guess between Sony and Marvel, they've both basically said Spider-Man will become part of the Avengers when we've run out of all other storylines.
Oh,
so that it's basically it's not going to happen.
Well, and it was an issue with it was the director of Amazing Spider-Man 2, Mark Webb.
Right.
I thought that this was a deal to get Mark Webb over to direct something for Marvel because he'd been tied into Sony, and so there was like some sort of a cross promotional agreement. That's what the end teaser sting is supposed to be. It was a way to get Mark Webb to direct, to jump out of contract for a bit to direct something for Marvel. So,
okay.
So it's a mess. It's a hot mess, and it's kind of sad. But
and the other crossover is now we've got. We've got X-Men Days of Future Past coming, and there's characters that have been presented in the teasers and trailers for that film that are clearly going to be in the Marvel universe,
but they will have different powers
based on what we're seeing in sort of our post, our mid credits, little Easter egg or whatever. We've got Scarlet Witch there. We've got a Scarlet Witch, There's
and Quicksilver.
And Quicksilver, So again, it's different studios with apparently, it's as I said, there's a lot of people that have written about all this and they're poking holes and teasing out threads. And at that point, I say, well, it's great to speculate. Why don't we just wait till the film comes out and we'll judge it on the merits of what they can put up on the big screen for us. To me, I always like to look at the film on its own and say, okay, if I disconnect it from everything else, because there are lots of things that happen here that even tie into Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the episodes that air after that, and it sets up pieces. But for me, what I really enjoyed about this is that standalone nature of looking at this as this Captain America. There's a big mystery, there's something going on within S.H.I.E.L.D. He's got to figure it out, and it to me, going back to where's Iron Man at this point, to me, because S.H.I.E.L.D. becomes, at risk, or there's something going on within S.H.I.E.L.D., to me it makes sense that they would have been able to, that someone on the inside would have been able to basically shut down, any communication with any of the Avengers, Tony Stark or whatever, to call into question. Because clearly what's going on is, Nick Fury is on the run, Captain America's on the run. There's a force within S.H.I.E.L.D. that's been able to compromise the integrity of the organization. So to me, I took that as reason enough to say, okay, we've got to isolate Captain America, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has been able to rally its forces to present this other front to the world, while inside it's trying to clear out this problem with Nick Fury and Captain America that's a possible threat to their grand scheme. And to me, I thought that's all I needed was okay. organization's at war with itself internally, but on the public face, it's going to say, hey, we're dealing with this. And, that was enough for me.
I like hearing that. I'm with you. I felt like the story was really quite nice. It laid out quite well, and I said compelling earlier. I was really, I was in it, and it's not a short film, but I didn't find myself wavering. I thought it was. I thought the intrigue was woven just right. I like seeing less of the captain in the uniform. I liked that he spent a lot of his time, although a little bit awkward, wandering around in his street clothes with that shield on his back. I like seeing him, process and kind of approach the world. It made it, to me, it addressed this issue of integration. Like, how well is this guy, catching up to his time, so that eventually that's not a joke we can play anymore. Let's just have a solid character and watch him catch up. And I think this movie was a lot of that for me. And I thought Chris Evans did a great job at being that catch-up guy and solving the crime.
So what I found really interesting and unexpected in this was the character of Black Widow. And, Captain goes on a specific journey where he's got to question, who he can trust, and who's loyal to him, who's loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D., what's going on. But the introducing the character of the Black Widow, who has always had a bit of a shadowy past, and to me, her character went on a very interesting journey as well, because at certain points I had to question, okay, whose side is she on? Because there is some mystery to her past, and I thought there were some interesting moments with her character, with her and the captain talking about sort of their place in the world and how they fit in and how she has adapted by being whoever she needs to be at that point. Whereas Captain America is a very fixed, you know what you get with him. He doesn't lie. He's very honest. And so these characters that are, their personality is very opposite, working together and going through this sort of journey of having to determine, how do we know who we can trust? What needs to be revealed to get this problem resolved? And I was pleasantly surprised with the arc her character took within the film.
Is it enough for you that it stands up to a solo film?
I know that people have been asking for a solo film.
It's been announced.
Oh, has it been officially announced?
Yeah.
Okay. I would be happy to see that. One of the trailers before the film was, the Scarlett Johansson film Lucy, which is, again, okay, Scarlett Johansson gets to be a badass and knock people around. And I think she's hit this point in her career where she can do that and draw in the audiences. I think Marvel has shown they can come up with compelling storylines for any of these characters. So I would be all behind that. And yeah. And also if we're going to talk about the other characters, what they did with the character of Falcon and Anthony Mackie in that role. It was this nice little tight team that came together to solve this issue. And it was, as I said, it wasn't so much a superhero movie. It was, here's a guy, he's got a problem, he's got to pull his resources together. Who can he count on and trust, and get the team together to fix the problem?
In a way, that description, I think, is fairly apt to the story, and it did remind me of films like Mission Impossible or, kind of the Bourne movies. Yeah. And like you were talking about, Pete, how it has the different, yes, they're within the superhero universe, but each one is kind of its own genre, and this is kind of more that political, espionage thriller, and I think that that definitely holds true for this film. And I really liked the way they brought in Robert Redford to play the character that he's playing. That really works well as this leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., but there's this kind of homage that he's playing to the characters that he played back in the 70s, like in 3 Days of the Condor, yes, and All the President's Men, where he was in these films that had all sorts of political intrigue. We talked about the Paranoia trilogy, and I think those films, Parallax View, and the other ones I just mentioned, all really fit well with the context of this film. And I love that they had Robert Redford kind of representing that shadiness of the government. It's like he's flipped and is on the other side now. And for me, that is an element that that I was really excited about, and a character that I really was excited about.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's one of the things I liked. As long as we're talking about the way this thing was kind of architected, Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely, who wrote the screenplay for The Winter Soldier, one of the things that they said in a recent interview with the LA Times was, we didn't get the job because of our love of epic battles. We're good at making humans believable in a ridiculous situation. And I really think that's true. Andy, to your point, I really felt like it had this vibe. The Winter Soldier had the vibe of Condor, of the Paranoia trilogy, of these films, of these sort of grittier films of the 70s, where we have this natural fear of the state. And I loved how sort of culturally we're coming back to that in the stories that we're seeing, and obviously there's a good reason for it. I think culturally there is a resonance with these types of stories, but in order to play it off in a Captain America story, I think that takes a special sort of skill that I think these guys bring to the screenplay, and I wonder if you guys could comment on just in general the writing.
Well, just really quick before, when you're talking about Redford, just one quick note too, is I think it was a very smart move to bring him in for two reasons. One, because most of these movies can become overwrought with just the same tone as far as when you bring in the same actors they don't really, Robert Redford comes from a different generation. Even, you're talking, it's just such a great crossing over, of talent and even acting. His approach to his acting is so. You look at Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You look at like Condor, all those things. His All the President's Men. You look at even in some of his other ones that he did, like Sneakers, and some of the later ones that were kind of his fun ones that he did. But he's his way, his style. You don't see a lot of that in film anymore. He's just a different light, and it's a breath of fresh air. But what was great about it is it brought a groundedness to this film that made it fun, because you go, wow, he plays this guy at first that you go, can we trust him? He never plays really the bad guy, so we trust him. And then when he flips and you don't trust him, you're like, well, that was amazing, because now who is he and why is he doing this? And he's not a guy. Robert Redford's the guy that he is typically playing in the movies I've seen. He is the guy that's sort of the, not anti-hero, but he's the guy against like the government. Like you said, he's fighting against the thing that we're always, we're all fighting for. I'll go Robert Redford, but now he's that guy. But what makes it cool is you still root for him, and he makes this movie more honest. A lot of the other superhero films you'll watch at the end, you feel like that was really fun, but it wasn't grounded. And that's what made this movie a little different, is I think Robert Redford put this movie in a totally different category, and it made it more genuine. When he was on the screen, I wanted to know more about S.H.I.E.L.D. I wanted to know more about why was he doing, what was going on, and the depth of why it was happening. And he, it's kind of not the when you're talking about the script, I don't know if someone else had played that is I'm trying to think of another actor modern day that would have played
Judi
that role.
Dench.
There we go.
Judi
Dench had played that. I don't know if I would have bought. I don't know if I would have not Judi Dench.
I didn't make your point well.
No, I'm thinking who else would have played? Gosh, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe like a Jude Law, or maybe like
Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg. Well, anyway, any number of other people, they would have fallen into the same trap of it being this, now I'm the bad guy, and you don't really care for him as much still. You don't really care about him. You care about him sort of in a light, kind of flimsy, sort of like non-depth way.
Well, Robert Redford makes you take things seriously.
You take it exactly. And so what happened is with the script, I don't know if I would have really gone with the whole idea of why he was trying to make everything equal. Let's take out a bunch of people so that we can make it better for everybody else. If somebody else would have said that, I would have gone, okay, you really want me to buy that? I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if you buy. Why are you hurting all? That's not enough.
That's a really interesting point. I wonder. I'm thinking. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I was going to say, because we'd start talking about the writing. I think Chadd is right on, because you look at the way this character is written, and you have to cast someone like Robert Redford, because it's not a villain like Loki, who's just like ego and I'm evil and I'm going to take over the world and I'm a ridiculous caricature. It was something. It's the villain who you can look at it and you can sort of step aside and say, oh, I see the logic by what he's doing, where it makes sense for him, and it's not, I've got evil purposes. I think I'm doing the right thing, and it's at odds against what, Nick Fury and Captain America stand for. But there's a logic and reason that is reasonable, that is not such an extreme fringe that he becomes, a cartoon of a villain, that I'm just bad because I was born bad. He talks about a situation in his past that is very personal to him, where Nick Fury went and did something, and he stepped outside the bounds of the law to get something done, and the result was something positive. And he took that, and it's taken to an extreme, but you can see how it makes sense logically for him. And to me, that is the more compelling villain, because it's frightening, because it's more rooted in this world where you can see what's going on. And to me, it was just brilliant writing at that point of what was going on. The scene in what I called the Dharma Initiative Shield Station, which I called the exposition bunker, where it's like, oh, we're gonna have this just dump of information. I wish there had been a better way to get all of that background out, but it gave us what was going on. This little twist, and it just, my brain exploded, and I thought, how interesting, because you can see how something towards good can easily just be tweaked a couple degrees and become something that's very ominous. And to me, that was the power in the writing of that, sort of plotting it out. How some specific scenes were written, as I said, got some issues. How can you get that across? I went with it. But it was one of those threads, as I pulled at it, I said, okay, I can't pull too hard, or it's gonna bother me too much.
Because again, they do a great job of making people sound normal in ridiculous situations.
Yes,
we can't let go of the ridiculous situation part.
Yeah.
I thought, right. I'm with you. I mean, this is one that I went with it. And I actually was on the record as really liking the first Captain America. I think I'm the guy who really liked the first Captain America film. I loved what they did with it. And I thought this built on it really nicely and pivoted in a really elegant way to make it an even, to do something that second movies often don't do, but the Marvel films have done, which is actually give us more of a character to like, to love or to hate in a new way, to develop our relationship rather than just play off of it. What do you think of that? Quote me.
Yeah. Stamp. I think changing, in a way, kind of changing the vibe of the genres for each of these films worked really well in the writer's favors as well. The first film, I mean, now it's really fresh in my mind, and actually I like it more than I remembered. I think it's just the third act where it really falls flat for me, but it's really great up until that point. But the first film, it really does have this great vibe that feels kind of like an old school war movie.
Right.
And I think that's what Joe Johnston and all the people involved were really trying to do, is to make a movie that felt kind of like an old school WWII war film. Go get 'em, all that sort of gung-ho military kick-ass vibe. And I think they did a really good job of that in the first one. And I really like how they shifted that. And I like how both of them are political films in their respective times. The first one fits really well in that World War II era vibe of the government and what the government is trying to do. Stop the Nazis, and also stop Hydra, because it is a superhero movie. But this one, putting that government spin on the story where, okay, we have to tell another story about a man who's, kind of leading the charge, leading the military, and it's not the army, it's SHIELD this time, but how he is now dealing with how all the political machinations in the world have evolved and changed, and how Hydra has kind of infiltrated its way into all these things, and changing that World War II vibe of a movie into more of that kind of that 70s political thriller, which, like you said, Pete, it very much is of the time right now, and we're probably getting pretty soon calling it, the tens political thrillers, because I can see a lot more of these coming out. We already had what was the Stephen Knight one, Closed Circuit, that came out last year.
Exactly. One of the things I like so much about the script is, again, is just how they bring in some of these new characters in a way that I think is really is fairly elegant. I loved the introduction of Anthony Mackie in the opening sequence, or the opening sequence of Washington during the running, the on your left sequence, which I think is just fantastic. I haven't seen anything about Anthony Mackie coming up in other films, but gosh, I hope they bring him back.
He was fantastic. I loved everything about his character, and I think the thing I love the most is that he's not even a superhero. He just has a really, really cool device that he uses to fly around, and I just loved that.
Well, and they do that really well. I mean, even with Scarlett Johansson's character. I mean, she's not a superhero either, really, but she's also an Avenger.
Yeah.
Same thing with Arrow. What's his name?
I totally missed it then. How did he get the uniform? I missed that. I watched it. When did he get the uniform?
Well, he was a paratrooper, right? Originally he was a paratrooper, and then he was on this special unit where they had these highly advanced backpacks, and there was the last one that was available, and they went and stole it. I mean, Steve, you just saw it today, right? I mean, it's been a while since I saw it.
I saw it last night, and I think they because we get it all happens off screen as far as I recall,
right?
Because it was like, I remember he opens the Captain opens the folder, and he's like, I thought you were a pilot. He's like, I never said I was a pilot. And he's like, you wore that thing? And he's like, oh, it's at this, there's guards, and it's like this 12-foot, or 12-inch, steel door, and they're like, yeah, no problem, we'll get it. And then
they have it.
And they have it. We don't need to see it because we know that based on what we saw in the, their initial mission onto the ship to get the stuff at the beginning, the whole MacGuffin for the USB thing. The two of them can take on, dozens of guys, no problem. So it's like, yeah, whatever, walk in the park, we'll go get it, and we've got it. So, which was nice because it kept it moving along. It was out there, and then when they knock that guy off the roof, it's like, oh, okay.
You know what's interesting?
And boom, that reveal was just
exactly. I wonder, you guys, and this may be me thinking too much into this. I think you're right. It kept the movie clipping along, and it made good on a promise that was delivered in the trailer. Right? Like, would they have needed more exposition if we didn't have such a wonderful upfront marketing introduction of this character? I mean, we knew who he was. We knew he was coming. We knew what he was capable of long before the movie was released. We'd seen the finished visuals.
Right. Yes.
So I've been thinking a lot about that, like the relationship between the trailer and the finished product. Like I wonder if we wouldn't have had to have seen more of his origin story if we hadn't had what we had in the market.
No, I think sometimes I wish I hadn't seen the trailer, because sometimes it goes back to a long time ago. A friend of ours walked into the theater to see Terminator 2, hadn't seen a single preview at all.
Oh,
and so was in complete suspense all the way up to the point where they're in the mall, and he's like, come with me if you want to live. And it's like, what? Arnold's the good guy? And it's like, because that line was in all the trailers. And it's like, wow, to go in just completely blind to that. I think sometimes for our hunger to get little tastes of things, sometimes we cheat ourselves out of those moments of those reveals that get sort of tossed out in the trailers. And it's just a few seconds of a guy with wings. And it's like, to have that reveal without seeing that would have been, I think, just so much better.
Well, this just came out in an article this week related to Man of Steel, the second Man of Steel movie. Zack Snyder said, I have a photo of Batman and Superman standing together. And he said, I want so deeply to send this out to the world because it's fantastic. But I have hidden it because I know that would cheat them of the experience that I had seeing them standing together.
Wow.
Nice.
Which I thought was really profound to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was great. Thank you, Zach, for keeping that in your desk. And related, there's a picture of Batman and Superman in Zack Snyder's desk.
TMZ, go.
Yeah, right. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Let's talk a little bit more about the direction of this film, can we?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was. I had no problem with it. I thought the action scenes were fun. It wasn't too.
It's a glowing review. I had no problem with it.
No problems. No, I mean, some people, like when the movie ended, I heard some people sitting around me going, "Oh, the action scenes were too all over the place," and it didn't bother me. Again, I don't really have a huge problem with shaky cam sorts of stuff. I didn't find it that shaky cam.
I didn't either.
Style, but I really thought they did a very effective job directing the film.
I always go in sort of, and I don't know why I do this. I have just sort of a natural skepticism of joint directors, and yet I'm always pleased with what happens.
Yeah.
Who were the guys who did Spirit of Vengeance? Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. This was co-directors, Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. And Ghost Rider was one of the terrible first films, and yet Spirit of Vengeance I thought was fantastic. The action in that film was absolutely wonderful and totally different. And I think it's everything to do with what these two guys brought. But I was similarly nervous. I'm always nervous at a Wachowski movie, and I met with mixed results.
Yeah.
So I was nervous going into this one. And yet I thought it was terrific.
I loved the whole sequence. It's great that we get to see Nick Fury finally put in a situation where we see Nick Fury. Because I just see Nick Fury with an eye patch yelling at everybody else while everybody else does everything. And now we get to see Nick Fury and because I really didn't know who Nick Fury was. I never read the comics with Nick Fury in it. So to me, he just seemed like a big jerk. And that's so funny because in the beginning of this, I feel justified because Captain America thinks Nick Fury is a big jerk. And so I was like, cool, man. We both think the same thing. But Nick Fury then is put in a situation where Nick Fury has to do what Nick Fury does, which is I was like, what does he do? And he's got this cool car. And I was like, okay, that must be part of like who he is. And it was cool to see him try to have to deal with like stuff, as who he is. I didn't get him as a character. And now watching him have to deal and get out of a situation in that action sequence was really well put together. It was raw. It was really organic. I felt, him trying to get out of that situation with his car in the beginning where they trapped him. And I was like, how are they going to get out of this? And it felt like a situation where, and I just have to say, I just heads up, I know the guy that does the storyboarding for these Marvel films, and it's a lot of the things that you see in those things where they put a character in a situation lately where it seems like, wow, this seems really organic how he's getting out of it. It seems like he's utilizing different tools he has, and that's a lot of it's due to my friend. That's just the way he choreographs some of those scenes, and it's just amazing. I'm like, wow, that's great. Rico is his name, and he just does a lot of that stuff. It's fantastic. But I thought Nick Fury was fun to watch him. Although I thought him dying, I don't know. I guess I wasn't too surprised that he came back. I don't know. Were you guys surprised he came back?
I wasn't surprised he came back. I also wasn't surprised that he died. And I think because of the way these Marvel films are getting laid out, eventually people are going to start getting knocked off because they want to end their contracts. They're like, okay, I've had enough of these films. I need to go do more Snakes on a Plane or whatever. And I really
that was low, man. That was super low.
Okay, Star Wars. Oh yeah, he's dead. but no, really, I really, it didn't surprise me, and I think that's the danger to these sorts of films is I don't I'm not really surprised when someone dies, because I kind of expect a contractual deal where I'm going to have to die at some point because I'm only going to do X number of these. As opposed to something like Serenity, which it was a big surprise when what's his name died in that film, because he was such a great character, and you really believed that the filmmakers behind the story would keep everybody alive. But when people started dying, it ups the stakes, and it really makes the story stronger, because you realize that nobody's safe. And I don't feel that in the Marvel films because of just the girth of this universe.
Well, for me, it wasn't so much about raising the stakes or anything like that. To me, it was the story. Basically, in this film, Captain America sort of systematically starts losing what he can hold on to. He doesn't fit into this time. We've got that set up. So first he loses Nick Fury. Then, S.H.I.E.L.D. is compromised. So the one person that he's got some sort of connection with, I mean, yes, there's some animosity back and forth, but, that's Captain America. He's always wants to shoot straight. So we take Nick Fury away. Then the organization of S.H.I.E.L.D. goes away. And then we take his only best friend from so long ago and take that away from him. Everything has been taken away from Captain America at that point in the film, and it just happened. Like, there goes the first one, there goes the second, third, his world just collapsed and fell apart once he saw Bucky was this Winter Soldier and didn't recognize him. He now had nothing. And so to me, it was really not so much of, we're going to do this. It was, to me, there was a function in terms of the story of what it was doing to Captain America and his character arc, that it was not so much just, we're going to do this because we need Nick Fury out of the picture for a while. It wasn't a plot contrivance. To me, it really served some purpose for sort of some emotional resonance with Captain America.
That's a good point. I never even thought of it like that. I think you have it nailed, the reason why they did all those things, because primarily, it was the first one. He is thrust into this, at the end of the first one, he's thrust into this weird new kind of world, and then you kind of then don't really see, what he's experiencing, in the Avengers movie. I mean, that's kind of the continuation of it. And he's kind of like, well, we know Captain America really doesn't fit in this new time. And then it's cool because that's exactly where it picks up. It's just like, okay, I still don't really fit here. And I'm this guy who really continues to want to be more than just this hero. I want to really live up to who I was when I said I wanted to join the army when I was a skinny kid. Right. And we're right. When you take away all those things, it helps us to see Chris Evans really have this character be, is he Captain America? Who is he without all these people that I guess we're kind of like surrounding him a little bit, even though he really didn't have anything. And that's fun to watch. You're right. I think that's what made it fun to watch. It makes it more, he's not in control ever. He's always given a decision, even all the way up to the very end of the film. Are you going to be a bad guy? Are you going to kind of cross the line a little to get what you want? Because that's what heroes do sometimes. They cross the line just a little bit because we sort of want them to a little bit, and we'll all cheer for him if he does. But at the very end, even when he's sitting there and he's looking at Bucky, and he's just like, I'm not going to fight you anymore. And it's just like, wow, he does exactly what somewhere in our hearts we want him to do, which is to go, you know what, I can hurt you, but I don't want to do that. I've already saved everybody else, but now it doesn't mean anything for me unless my best friend is with me. And it's just like, that's amazing. Like, that was really cool.
I think that's one of the interesting things that makes Captain America kind of compelling, is that he is the inner soldier, right? Now, even when he's broken and everything gets taken away, he still has that sense of Captain America's honor. Right. And that's what makes him a little bit different. Like, we have fun right now in this sort of current gestalt about seeing what happens when you break superheroes. We give PTSD to Iron Man. We find ways to really hurt superheroes and see how they react. And Captain America is probably a testament to his sort of longevity. And also what makes him a little bit awkward is that, when you break him and he doesn't actually break, is it as much fun? And yet I still find myself, I like knowing it's that sort of aspirational hero. I like knowing that someone thought of this character who is always going to be that guy. That there is someone out there who wrote a character that won't be broken.
Yeah.
And
even from the first movie, it's very apparent that is exactly who he is, and it's great that they're sticking with that with him.
Well, and we had this conversation about Man of Steel when Superman kills Zod.
Mm-hmm.
That was an example of breaking a superhero that we formerly thought could not be broken. And I think that's in contrast to this, because Superman was arguably the other character that stands in those shoes, and not anymore. That has been broken.
Right.
So, Zach, again, back at you.
That's why we're going to steal that photo.
Okay, so I know you already brought up, Steve, a little bit sarcastically, I think, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. play. Does anybody watch the show?
No. I wasn't sarcastic at all. I mean, it's really, because I started watching the show. I didn't get that far into it, and then I heard after Thor: The Dark World, there was a little bit of a crossover, and to me, it's really speaks to the power of this cinematic universe with things that go on in the theatrical released films carrying over and having consequences in the television series, that it really connects in those worlds together. We know the character of Agent Coulson, from all the Phase 1 films and all of that. So to me, it's a testament to the ultimate blueprint or plan that they have, that they account for those things, that the writers on that series have to be brought into the loop with the filmmakers of what's going on and what the repercussions can be and how they can sort of script that and plan around that. So to me, it's a really complex mechanism, and honestly, no sarcasm at all. And I'm trying to get caught up on Hulu, but unfortunately I've missed a whole bunch of episodes, so I've got like the past 3 weeks that I can watch, so which is enough to sort of see what happened before and then the aftermath.
Well, and honestly, those will be the 3 episodes that you need to see. And this is where, so I have 2 points on this. The first one is to the point of the sort of saccharine approach to death and killing these important characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We know, yes, that it will come, but we've also already been conditioned that important characters don't die on this show. And this is a great example, or in this universe, this is a great example in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where, we saw Coulson, who was a beloved agent. I mean, I think we already had an affinity for his character, even from just seeing him in blips leading up to the Avengers. But when he died in the Avengers, it was a great death. And it was very melodramatic, and it was a sword through the chest kind of a thing. And then we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where they bring him back due to the miracle of alien science, right? So that's great. We now know that these important characters, utility players even, will be brought back at the whim of the writers. They'll figure that stuff out. And yet, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. then becomes hamstrung by the cinematic universe, right? We saw it leading up to Thor, where they had this sort of confusing kind of shadow conspiracy leading up to the Asgardians, and then Thor comes out and a whole bunch of big stuff happens on the show. So they had to just sort of really kind of hold on to the action until Thor. And then the same thing happens here. We lead up to what we knew was coming, what we knew was going to be sort of bookmarked in this movie, Captain America, which was the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. And these 3 episodes on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. end up making a really interesting sort of what this show should have been all along kind of an experience in terms of the action and the drama and the intrigue that is brought to the small screen. I really look forward to what they do expanding this universe on Netflix. And I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., while I don't believe it'll be long-lived, I think it is a great testament to what can be done when you commit to these long-term multi-platform storylines.
And not just, and to that point also, the smarts they have in constructing however it is that they're doing it, but constructing the contracts with all the actors to get them to come in here and there, even if it's just for like 1 or 2 scenes, like having Gary Shandling come in for his little 1 scene as a senator, 2 scenes as the senator that he played in Iron Man 2, having Jenny Agutter come back in. We had seen her, I think, back in the Avengers, and having her pop up again just to kick some serious butt, which was fantastic to see. And just all these actors, whether it's from the first Captain America film, like Toby Jones as Zola coming forward again, or having just these people popping in just the smallest little roles, like some of the soldiers that helped Captain America out here and there, and were popping up. I mean, I love that the way that they keep having these people appear, where and this is something that I always thought would be great in these Marvel films, is how you could have somebody who is a villain appear as just a random character passing by 3 films previously, and then seeing how that character kind of develops to the point where they're actually a big character. And I really enjoy that in these films.
Yeah, villains and heroes alike. I mean, yeah, like the fact that we get to see Bucky Barnes develop and have to look forward to 9 films with him as a character, when we saw it's the "we knew you when" kind of syndrome. I love it.
And it also just it builds this consistency to these worlds. The fact that, yes, we can trust that Gary Shandling will always play that senator every time he comes back into one of these films, if he comes back again. But it's fun. I love that consistency, and the fact that they're doing it back and forth with the TV shows, with all these different films and worlds. I mean, not just these films, but Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm sure they're going to be working on that same consistency in Ant-Man, everything else.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty compelling model.
It's smart. It's really smart.
Okay, all right. How do we feel? Do we feel good? Should we talk about it? Are there any other in particular performances that you would like to talk about? Kobe Smulders, Frank Grillo, Maximiliano Hernandez. His character Jasper Sitwell is one of those that has, and there are a number of these characters, but Sitwell in particular has been a recurring character on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I found his role going back and forth between the Winter Soldier and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was one of the anchor points of that consistency that you bring up, Andy. I mean, it's it's funny, even though he's just sort of an agent, he ends up being kind of a pivotal agent that it actually causes you to forget where you learned certain key points in the plot. Right. I don't remember certain things that I learned in that I learned in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that feel absolutely at home. Totally believable in Captain America.
Toby Jones is goofy.
Okay, I on a little side note, I just have to say, at that moment when Toby Jones as Dr. Zola is in the computer, I thought, wow, I am getting to see Transcendence right now for a good
I thought that too.
And it's probably more entertaining than the 2 hours that I would have spent over there. So, okay. And even here, it's still troublesome of how you pull this off. And it as I said, exposition delivered, served its purpose. I would have had 2 hours of that. I just needed 7 minutes. That was all. That was enough.
What's so funny about Toby Jones is I couldn't get Toby Jones also did the voice of Dobby the house elf, and I could not get that out of my head. I thought, really, I mean, he could have been replaced in both of these films by Dobby the house elf, and it would have been just as appropriate.
He was Dobby in this film. I felt like he was just like, ha ha ha, and he felt so. It was I started laughing when I saw him because he was so happy that he was in a computer. He's like, I don't have to pee again. And he was so joyful. I was like, God, that sounds like a miserable life, but you seem like you're enjoying it. So, but I just thought that was really fun seeing. It just added a whole other thing to the movie. Just seeing him in there. He was just in there just to say, like, I knew you'd come down here to turn all this equipment on, and now you've ruined it for yourself because I've sabotaged it. And that was just kind of fun. It was just a way to add him in there and make it. I mean, continue with the film, but it was cool seeing him. I don't know. He was fun to watch because he's kind of like got that crazy. He's great crazy scientist, you know. He's a crazy.
Did they say in the film? Am I forgetting how Shield put him into the computer and why they did?
Well, I think it was obviously USB.
It was. I think Black Widow said something about there was like in the. I mean, clearly he was like a prisoner of war, and then I thought she said there was something in the 60s or 70s about the Americans recruiting a lot of these German scientists, and then something about preserving his intelligence. I mean, again, it was one of those. We'll toss it off in a couple of lines. It sounds like it makes sense. So
right.
You go with it. And you don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But yeah, clearly you can easily transfer somebody's consciousness into, as he said, 200,000 miles or feet of magnetic tape or something like that. Yeah.
You kind of wonder. I mean, they do set this up where, Zola is kind of sets up that he's in a computer he can kind of send himself anywhere, although it's made a little bit less believable that it's on all that magnetic tape. I don't know. I'm holding out a little bit of hope just because of the sort of the glee I have watching him in a computer, Dobby in the computer, that maybe he sent himself out somewhere else and we'll see him again even though he was blown to smithereens.
I just thought
he's in the cloud now.
Yeah, he's in the cloud. It's the Zola
funny
cloud.
How they use these like incredible technical advances in old time technology. It's just like I used an ironing board and this, and look at the spool of thread. What you can do, and I mean that computer system is so old and everything, but they have these major advances in technology way in the past. And it just doesn't. It's just funny.
Right.
Anyway, cool. I liked him. He was fun.
Anybody else stand out for you lot that you want to talk about?
Did they show at all? They just showed pictures of what's his name? He was in. He's Iron Man's dad.
Howard Stark.
Howard Stark. Yes.
There was a little bit. There was the picture when they get into the bunker, like the founders of Shield, and you've got Howard Stark and you've got Peggy Carter and third one I can't remember who, but and I'm trying to think if there was a flashback to, or if he was in some of the sort of captain's memories or something like that in the early days of Shield or something like that.
It might have been in some of the footage at the Captain America Museum.
No, that's what it was.
Right. Yeah.
Now, what'd you guys think of Gary Sinise?
His voice is very recognizable.
Or how about Robert Clotworthy? He had a good job in the Fury Car voice. He was the Fury Car. Robert Clotworthy.
Air conditioning is functioning normally.
Yeah. See, I was expecting Jarvis's voice to be in the car to.
That would have been better.
Nick, but oh well.
Yeah, you guys didn't think Robert Clotworthy did a good job?
No. I mean, the one character that I have questions about, and again, it's one of those threads that I don't want to pull on too hard, is so you've got this villain that's, this pirate or whatever that's got the shield stuff at the beginning that they go on this mission, and he's a really tough guy. He goes toe to toe with Captain America for a good amount of time and escapes, and then we see him later on some like surveillance footage, or they've supposedly captured him when Captain America is up there in the upper levels of Shield talking with Robert Redford, Alexander Pierce. He's like, oh yeah, we've got him and this is live. And then that character, who is apparently this, horrible villain, that they've got him, disappears, and then we don't really see anything until our sort of mid-credits Easter egg. So I don't know who this guy is. I feel like now you're telling me he's a really important character who's going to play some important role with what's coming up, but I really don't know who he is, where he came from, and I felt, in the film he sort of got dropped off, and then they bring him back at the end, and I thought I would have, I guess, wanted more background information, and maybe it's embedded there in the front when there's a lot of things happening, but that was the one thing I felt like, who is this guy? What side is he on? He's got whatever Loki's staff, or what's going on? Who is he? What side's he playing? What does he want?
I was not tracking. I know who you're talking about now.
This
is when we and then we pan up and we see the two kids in the glass aquariums.
That was
Scarlet Witch and. Oh no, this was a different time. I'm still not tracking with you.
It's the guy who what's his name? What was his name? Is it Rumlow? Is that him?
No, but Batroc.
Batroc, he's a mercenary.
Yeah, he's the mercenary.
Yeah, right, the mercenary.
Fights Captain America, and they've got. Which was a really nice sort of hand-to-hand piece.
Right.
And then he shows up at the end, and he's. I think that's who it is because it seems like he's like part of Hydra, but not, and he's got his own purpose. But no, Pete, you're right. He's got the staff. Or the top part of the staff, and then they walk someplace, and that's where we see the twins that he's got there, and he's talking about there's whatever magical things are happening or whatever. So I just felt like it was sort of this MacGuffin at the beginning, which with the whole USB, I'll put that all over there for other conversation as far as that whole MacGuffin and what was going on. But I thought here's our key villain. He's going to somehow tie into the Winter Soldier, and he just disappeared for the entire movie. Yeah.
Well, isn't he a more of a Spider-Man villain?
I don't know.
Spider-Man villain? Why?
Well, I don't know. I'm just sort of catching up on some notes, and it seems like in Ultimate Spider-Man he's all over the place, beaten up by Venom, and it ends up being a much more of a Spider-Man storyline. And so I wonder if his was kind of a nod, but I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody out there who knows.
Well, I think
much
he was.
more about
I
this than
don't
do.
think he was in Spider-Man until the cartoon series, though. I don't think he was in the.
You don't think he was in the comics?
Yeah.
Oh, no. According to Wikipedia, he showed up in Tales of Suspense number 75 back in March 1966.
I remember.
Boom. That's in your face, Andy.
It was Tales of Suspense. Was that a Spider-Man story?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
All right. Clearly, we're out of our depth here. Let's wrap this up. Yeah, one last thing.
Character. Gary Shandling. That's the only character that threw me off. I was like, here we going. And then Gary Shandling?
Yeah,
he was
in Spider-Man too. Yeah.
He was in Spider-Man what?
No, he's in Iron Man 2.
Oh, was he in Iron Man as well?
Yeah. Yeah, he's the one that tries to take all the Stark stuff and he's just the
maybe okay. They keep throwing him in there and every time I throw him in, I guess when they throw him in there I just go, wow, this is weird. It just seems like a pull from the film a little bit.
All right, let's go around and do some final comments, and then we will commence the ranking. Steve.
I think, as I said, there's a few little things. I mean, you can nitpick any film, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I do want to say I did not get a chance to see it in 3D. I did not get a chance to see it in Dolby Atmos because I waited a couple of weeks and none of the Atmos theaters had it. So that's one of my regrets is perhaps that Atmos experience to see what that would have brought to the film. But definitely highly recommend this one and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Andrew.
I did see it in Atmos, and I didn't mention that, but I enjoyed it. It sounded great. There were sounds everywhere. The trailer for Atmos is really almost the best part because that's the one that really defines the Atmos for you more than the film itself. Because by the time the film's playing, I really couldn't pin the sound from my left top over my head speaker from the the one behind me, but it sounded good. I really enjoyed this film a lot more than I enjoyed the first one. I feel that the first one kind of dies off in the third act, but this one, I mean, maybe it's just I enjoy the 70s conspiracy films a little more. I really enjoyed that take on this story. I feel like calling it The Winter Soldier was the wrong title for the film. I feel like they could have come up with something better so that it wasn't so centered on the Winter Soldier because he definitely isn't a character that carries the film. But I did enjoy everything going on in the film. I enjoyed the direction. I enjoyed the story. And I enjoyed this as a part of the Marvel Universe and looking forward to the next one.
And Chadd?
Captain America, I thought this was probably my second most favorite film of all the Marvel films right now. As far as, I think Iron Man 1 was my favorite so far still. I really like this one a lot, and so many different reasons. I thought there were so many different levels that were added into it. I like, again, Robert Redford being in there really grounded it, and it's really, again, super difficult to push a movie with the way that they do these movies, and because there's just usually so much that you have to believe, and as a viewer, you want to believe it to get into it, but at the end, you're not left with much, because you're like, okay, I'll kind of go with this and I'll go with that. I thought this movie had so much, the action, the characters that you want to see, that come into view, like, with Anthony Mackie is the Falcon. It adds so much. There's so many layers to it. The action is like, I think what Andy said, like, some people didn't like that. I love the action. I thought it made sense to me. And then overall, I think that, yeah, you're right. The first film didn't make it, an amazing, the first film wasn't amazing. This second film, I think it's worth the 2 hours. It's worth watching it. And it adds so much to this universe that they're creating. And they add so much to Chris Evans' character, Captain America. I think I think if you're thinking of going to see it, even if you hadn't seen the first one, I think you'll love this one. I think it's great.
I concur, and I think this is one of those films that allows me to comfortably pull the hood down over my eyes for all of the nitpickery, and I love doing the nitpickery too. But this one just allows me to sort of let it go in a way that I really enjoy the action. I enjoy the way I think really, one of the things we didn't talk about is the way they use the shield as a character. I think the shield, this iconic element of the Captain America lore, became much more of an identity piece and had much more sort of movement to it. The way he interacted with it in a way that was much more active and personal, and I thought that was fantastic. In general, I think I appreciate what the Russo brothers and Markus and McFeely did to bring the story to light, and I love the way it generally fits and propels the cinematic universe. I think they are at a real crossroads with the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'm looking forward to seeing that continue to pay off on the small screen and in Age of Ultron. So that's what I think, and now I think we should rank it.
I think we should. It's a shame that Tommy's not here to sing our song.
I know, that makes me so sad. I may have to insert it from one of the prior episodes. Head on over to flickchart.com, everybody. Flickchart is where we do our stack rankings, and our user account is, what is it?
TNR Film Board.
TNR Film Board. Flickchart.com/TNR Film Board. That's where you can keep up with all the movies we have talked about on this show. And, of course, if you want to see the longer list of the regular Next Reel shows, you can head over to flickchart.com/The Next Reel. So we've got 2 accounts over there. That's how much we love the Flickchart, guys.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, ready?
Ready.
Captain America. Here we go. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, or Divergent?
Wait a minute. Captain America.
Captain America.
Captain America. Yeah.
I was waiting. I felt like you guys really should speak faster.
I know. That was like Captain America or the Puppet Show. Captain America.
Ooh. Captain America or The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug.
Captain America.
I would do Smaug because the dragon.
Nope, Captain America.
Because of the dragon? That's the only reason?
No, I mean, I enjoyed the movie quite a bit too.
Did you? I have to see it.
I'll watch The Desolation of Smaug more than I will watch Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Oh, see, I don't think that's true.
No,
I think that's true for me.
No, I don't think it's even true for you.
You're lying.
No, it's not true for me. I'm going to go with Captain America here.
All right.
America, because I haven't seen that one.
Captain America or World War Z?
World War Z.
Yeah, I would do World War Z.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to see Captain America in a zombie apocalypse.
Yes. That'd be great.
That's Phase 4. Phase 4 Marvel.
Oh my goodness. Okay, there we are. Number 6 on Flickchart.
Hey, crack the top 10.
6 out of 21.
There you go.
There you go. It didn't, sometimes Flickchart has these weird things where it didn't let me rank it against number 4 and 5, which is Looper and Side Effects.
I knew you were
Yeah.
I probably would have put Captain America above at least Side Effects.
Yeah,
I would. I would too.
Looper's tough though. I like Looper. Looper's fun.
Yeah, Looper is fun. I'm gonna just re-rank Side Effects so that it ends up it ends up below Captain America.
Okay.
Yeah, you
right.
can't.
Andy's manipulating the vote. Please pay no attention.
No, I think we're all in consensus on that.
It's
Yeah, we
ironic.
all agreed.
So we agreed, but I just think it's ironic that we're talking about the NSA conspiralist film, The Winter Soldier, and you're manipulating the vote.
It is a bit like
Just a touch on the nose. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging out and listening to us jaw about this movie, and thank you, Chadd Stoops.
Thank you for having me again. I love this. It's awesome. You guys are awesome.
Oh, you're awesome, Chadd. And Steve Sarmento, thank you for being awesome as well.
Oh, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you guys.
Andy, you pretty much I get my fill of you.
Yeah. Here we are again, you and me.
Hey, this was super fun. Deeply miss our fallen comrades for the week, Tommy Handsome and Mike Evans. Hopefully they'll be back next month with another exciting episode of the Next Reels Film Board. See you next time, everybody. Thank you.